During Hurricane Camille in 1969, the rainfall was so heavy in Virginia that birds were drowning in trees. The storm dumped 28 inches of rain over a 5-hour span and took the lives of over 100 people. After his wife died during a long route to the hospital, Dashrath Manji devoted his life to making the route shorter. He spent 22 years carving a 300-foot path through a mountain using only a hammer and chisel, and managed to shorten the journey from 34 miles to 9. In May of 2020, Yukon student Peter Manfredonia was having issues with his motorcycle. When two elderly gentlemen approached to help him, Peter pulled out a samurai sword and murdered one man while seriously injuring the other. He then circled around them multiple times with his bike before stealing another man's pickup truck and fleeing to his hometown. That's when he murdered his childhood friend and kidnapped the victim's girlfriend before driving south. Once he reached New Jersey, he fled the car alone and started walking on foot. Manfredonia's actions quickly sparked a massive manhunt that spanned multiple states and garnered national attention. However, it became increasingly difficult to locate the killer since this was during the peak of the pandemic, allowing him to easily conceal his face with a mask. After a week-long search, Peter was finally apprehended in Maryland. He was later diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses that caused him to suddenly snap. He received a 55-year prison sentence for his crimes and then apparently gained 200 pounds while in prison. In January of 2017, 71-year-old Bernard Gore was supposed to meet his wife and daughter at a Westfield Mall in Sydney, Australia, but never showed up. He'd apparently been doing some shopping on his own before they showed up, then completely disappeared without a trace. After frantically searching for her husband who suffered from dementia, Angela Gore filed a missing persons report with local authorities. Bernard was last seen by a store clerk who said the man looked confused on the morning of his disappearance. Investigators were initially hopeful when surveillance footage showed Bernard walking towards a fire escape, but they didn't realize that through the exit was a complete labyrinth of stairwells, confusing hallways, and self-locking doors. In fact, the entire fire escape stretches for 8 miles, and numerous mall shoppers have been lost down there before, with one woman describing it as a maze from a nightmare. Accordingly, it took police 3 weeks to finally locate Bernard's lifeless body in the stairwell. He was likely wandering around the fire escape for up to an entire week before eventually succumbing to natural causes. Bernard's death was officially ruled the result of a misadventure. Following the release of the original Exorcist, people were completely terrified of Linda Blair, the young actress who played the possessed girl Reagan in the film. She received hundreds of daily death threats as people often avoided walking past her on the sidewalk out of fear of being cursed. The Soviet Union built a massive stockpile of 45,000 nuclear weapons and then dissolved in 1991, leaving behind poorly paid guards who no longer had a country to hold allegiance to. Therefore, many of those nukes were sold to the highest paying bidders and have remained missing to this day. In 1977, 20-year-old Oregon woman Colleen Stan was hitchhiking to her friend's birthday party when she was kidnapped by Cameron and Janice Hooker, trusting them because they had an infant daughter in their car. Long before this, the couple agreed that husband Cameron could capture a slave to tie up for his pleasure, and he had decided on Colleen. For the next 7 years, Colleen was repeatedly tortured and kept locked in a tiny wooden coffin under the couple's bed for up to 23 hours a day. Cameron forced her to sign her life away to slavery via contract and convinced her that she was being watched by a powerful organization called the Company, which he claimed would painfully torture her and her family if she ever tried to escape. One day, 4 years after being kidnapped, Colleen was allowed to visit her family by herself, but she didn't reveal her situation to them due to her fear of the consequences. Her family simply thought she was involved in a cult, so they didn't want to pressure her to come home, fearing that she would stay away forever. The very next day, Colleen returned for a second visit with Cameron posing as her boyfriend, but again, nothing was done. 3 years later, Cameron wanted Colleen to become his second wife, which was a turning point for his wife Janice. In August of 1984, Janice secretly informed Colleen that they weren't part of the Company, and Colleen managed to escape soon afterwards. In the months that followed, Colleen didn't contact the police but continued to call Cameron routinely to give him a chance to reform. But 3 months later, Janice reported her husband to police and he received 100+ years in prison. In 2019, the wife of Tampa Bay Rays prospect Blake Bivens was tragically shot and killed by her 18-year-old brother. Their newborn baby and the woman's mother were also victims of the random murder spree, which Bivens found out about from a headline he saw on Facebook. The pitcher later posted, "2 days ago my heart was turned to ash. My life as I know it is destroyed." Canadian serial killer nurse Elizabeth Wetlaufer told her pastor that she murdered 4 elderly patients by injecting them with insulin, and the pastor kept his promise to not turn her in. Afterwards, she would go on to murder at least 2 more patients before confessing to police. Kim Jong-un's older brother Kim Jong-nam was supposed to be the next heir to North Korea's throne, but he's believed to have lost his position at the age of 30 after trying to get into Disneyland Japan with a fake passport. Because of the embarrassment he caused his father, Jong-nam was exiled from the country and later assassinated by the North Korean government after many failed attempts. In 2006, 27-year-old Ohio State medical student Brian Schaefer entered a bar with some friends. After security cams recorded him entering through the bar's only public entrance, Schaefer was never seen exiting the bar and has not been seen nor heard from since. Here's an example of a pillory, which was used as a form of capital punishment in 19th century China. The man in the photo can't reach his face with his hands, so he must rely on pedestrians to feed him and give him water like a dog. The device also made it incredibly hard to sleep comfortably, essentially torturing the prisoner until they died from starvation. When Prince died in 2016, he didn't leave a will for his estate worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Within 3 weeks of his accidental overdose, nearly 700 people claimed to be his half-sibling in hopes of cashing in on his death. In 1964, an accident at a nuclear facility in Rhode Island resulted in the largest single full-body dose of radiation in history. The victim received the equivalent to 700,000 x-rays at the same time and died in total agony 49 hours later. Here's a photo of serial killer John Wayne Gacy hugging his sister just before his execution. The killer clown murdered at least 33 young men and boys and hid their remains under his house. He was executed by lethal injection in 1994. Actress Tina Fey received her chin scar at the age of 5 when a stranger randomly entered her front yard while she was playing and slashed her across the face. The man was never identified nor seen again. A python from Australia became addicted to meth after living in a drug lab for several years. Police busted the operation before sending the snake to rehab for 7 months. In Japan, women are traditionally banned from entering a sumo ring under any circumstances. This tradition is so strictly imposed that in 2018, 2 women were forced to leave the ring, even though they were performing CPR on a mayor who had collapsed inside. In 2018, Kaylee Mudhart ripped out her own eyeballs and smashed them with her hands during a meth-induced psychotic episode. Kaylee had been awake for almost 48 hours straight, snorting and injecting a concoction of tainted methamphetamine which caused horrific hallucinations. These photos were taken at the wedding of Heather and David Mosher at a Connecticut chapel in 2017. Heather was battling advanced breast cancer but found the strength to marry the love of her life just 18 hours before passing away. Actress Brittany Murphy and her husband both mysteriously passed away from pneumonia and severe anemia in their home only 5 months apart. Murphy's mom believes both of them were victims of toxic mold. Jonah Hill had to be hospitalized while filming The Wolf of Wall Street after snorting too much fake cocaine. In 2021, an 82-year-old man from Austria had the wrong leg amputated during surgery. The man was told he would still need his other leg amputated as well. The hospital said the incident occurred as a result of a sequence of unfortunate circumstances. Here's a devastating photo of a Colorado police officer distracting a little girl after her dad lost his life in a car accident. Judy Melanik is a medical examiner who identified hundreds of bodies after the 9/11 attacks, most of which were just scraps of flesh or pieces of limbs. She was called in August of 2002 because someone had found a foot bone on top of a skyscraper a quarter-mile away from Ground Zero. In the case that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were left stranded on the moon, NASA planned on cutting off communication with them. They didn't want to record how the men chose to die, leaving them to either run out of oxygen or take their own lives with no further earthly contact. FDNY Ladder 3 was one of the first units to show up at the World Trade Center on 9/11. Its crew of 11 men sadly perished in the collapse of the North Tower, and now their truck is on display in the 9/11 Museum. In April of 2015, 28-year-old Shayna Sims gained access to a funeral home in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She pretended to be a makeup artist to access the body of Tabitha Lynch. Apparently, Shayna resented Lynch and suspected that her husband had been having an affair with her. So as payback, Sims decided to mutilate Lynch's body, cutting up her face and removing multiple organs and chunks of her hair. Court sentenced her to 16 years in prison for unlawfully removing a body part from a corpse. On the morning of October 9, 2020, 27-year-old Texas woman Taylor Parker was pulled over by a state trooper after driving erratically. She explained that she had just given birth to the baby on her lap, so they were both brought to the hospital. But upon examining her, doctors realized she hadn't actually been pregnant at all, and the true horrors began to unfold. It turned out that Taylor had a hysterectomy when she was younger and therefore couldn't bear children, which her husband threatened to leave her over. In response, Taylor spent 35 weeks completely faking a pregnancy, making herself look pregnant, faking ultrasounds, and even throwing a gender reveal party. Around the time the baby was supposed to be due, Taylor stabbed her pregnant friend over 100 times before cutting her baby out of her abdomen while the woman was still alive. Both the baby and her mother ended up passing away, and Taylor Parker was later sentenced to death for her unspeakable actions. In 2012, 88-year-old Ilda Maciel died in the hospital after her nurses made a critical error while attempting to feed her. They accidentally injected chicken soup into her veins rather than into her feeding tube. In 2012, 23-year-old gaming addict Chen Rongyu died of a heart attack while playing League of Legends for 23 hours straight in a Taiwanese cafe. It took staff hours to realize he was dead since he fell back in his chair and his arms were still stretched out toward his mouse and keyboard. In 2013, 19-year-old Maureen Kelly was camping in the forests of Washington State with some friends when she suddenly told them that she wanted to go on a spiritual quest. She then stripped naked, crossed a nearby creek, and was never seen again. Police quickly discovered her bare footprints on the other side of the creek, but they ended at a paved road and the trail went cold. Often translated as death by 1,000 cuts, Ling Chi was a brutal form of execution used in China for nearly 1,000 years until it was outlawed in 1905. Journalist Sir Henry Norman described it as, "The criminal is fastened to a rough cross, and the executioner, armed with a sharp knife, begins by grasping handfuls from the fleshy parts of the body, such as the thighs and breasts, and slicing them off. Then the limbs are cut off piecemeal at the wrists and the ankles, the elbows and the knees, the shoulders and hips. Finally, the victim is stabbed to the heart and his head is cut off." Many reports detailed victims screaming for hours until they died. In 1998, Dana Carvey underwent open heart surgery to clear a blocked artery, but the surgeon operated on the wrong blood vessel. After spending 6 months recovering from the life-threatening botch, he won a $7.5 million lawsuit against the hospital and donated all of it to charity. In 2015, an Italian grandma accidentally sent 2 adults and 3 children to the hospital after making them hot cocoa that had expired in 1990. In 2013, a collection of files revealed that the US government lobotomized over 2,000 veterans against their will after World War II. They were lobotomized for reasons such as PTSD, depression, schizophrenia, and homosexuality. In 2023, 92-year-old dementia patient Tom McDonald poured washing detergent over his bowl of cereal thinking it was milk. After eating most of the bowl, he told his daughter he wasn't feeling well and was soon rushed to the hospital, where he later died from acute toxicity. While 33-year-old actress Carol Lombard was on a war bond tour in 1942, she won a coin toss that determined she and her group would return home by plane instead of by train. Tragically, their flight would end up crashing into a mountain near Las Vegas, killing all 22 passengers on board, including 15 U.S. Army soldiers. 28-year-old Caitlin Jensen's life was changed forever after just a routine visit to the chiropractor. She went to have her neck adjusted for stiffness, during which 4 arteries in Caitlin's neck were accidentally dissected, resulting in a horrible stroke. She was reportedly without a pulse for 10 minutes until she could be revived by doctors. Caitlin was left with nearly full-body paralysis, only capable of blinking her eyes and moving her left thumb. Just last year, actor Anthony Starr received a 12-month prison sentence after being involved in a bar fight in Spain. According to reports, he drunkenly assaulted a chef by punching him in the face and smashing a bottle over his head. Starr then allegedly told the man, "You've committed the mistake of your life and I'm going to look for you. I want to kill you." The victim received 4 stitches in the hospital, and Starr managed to avoid jail time by paying him $4,000 in compensation. Bears in Russia sometimes get so desperate for food in the summer that they've been known to rip apart cemeteries and feast on the corpses of the recently deceased. In 1967, Prime Minister of Australia Harold Holt mysteriously disappeared while swimming in Queensland. He was presumed dead the next day and his body was never found. Former football star Brian Banks spent 6 years in prison until his alleged rape victim admitted that it never happened. This was the emotional moment when his innocence was proven and he was exonerated.